Hey there to all of our viewers, and welcome to our breakdown of UFC 309 Jones versus Miocic going down from Madison Square Garden this Saturday. We got a fun pay per view card here. Not the best in terms of top level talent, but certainly a lot of exciting fights that we're looking forward to break down, as always, for Dine Sports. Check out our full write up for these picks come Saturday. But as of now, a couple days prior, we'll go through each of the fights, letting you know who we are picking. Joining me as always, Nick. Let's get right into it with the heavyweight main event between John Jones and Stipe Miocic. This for the heavyweight undisputed championship, a fight that has been some time coming, scheduled last fall at MSG. But due to Jones' injury, rescheduled here a full year later. Jones currently the minus 650 favorite in this matchup over Stipe, who could be had at plus 450. Nick, give me your thoughts on the heavyweight main event.
Yeah, I mean the names on this fight are about as good as you can get. But at the same time, I mean both these guys far, far past their respective primes. I mean Stipe, well, arguably the greatest heavyweight in UFC history. I mean, it's an argument you could make for maybe Cain Velasquez, a few guys outside of the UFC. But what Stipe's done in terms of title defenses in the division, no one's been able to match. 6'4", same as John Jones. John Jones, a career light heavyweight, arguably the greatest MMA fighter to ever fight in the promotion, certainly. 27-1-0, that only loss being a 12-6 elbow. Rule that just got changed, so he should be undefeated. But at the same time, I mean, a lot of his reign came against kind of, I don't know, a mediocre division when he was on top of it. A big part of that was just how good he was. But at the same time, I mean, and when you look at the resumes between these two guys, I mean, the best wins are pretty consistent. It's Daniel Cormier. But yeah, I mean, two awesome fighters. Stipe, a boxer first and foremost. Jones, good pretty much everywhere, has a wrestling background. Really good in the clinch, though. Really changed the game with the way he's using elbows and knees, or he has through the years. Again, Jones, 13, I think, title defenses. One of the most storied careers in the sport. But a lot of people are on him this week and kind of deservedly so. He's been holding the title for what, over a year now. Tom Aspinall has defended an interim belt, which is something that never happens. Jones doesn't seem to want to fight Tom Aspinall, which would be the fight to make here. Stipe has been out of action since he was KO'd against Francis Ngannou. Ngannou's gone on to the PFL. He's had his time in boxing, etc. So really, we're getting this fight like a couple years later than I think anyone necessarily wants it. At the same time, like we talk about these guys this way, but for the casual fan, I mean, these are two names that are known. They're well known, both these guys, and it's going to sell pay per views. They're in MSG. It's a huge fight. It is for the heavyweight belt. But yeah, I mean, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't as excited for this fight as I would have been a few years ago. In terms of the X's and O's, I mean, we see Jones here as the massive favorite coming off that nice win over Cyril Gahn. I think he's probably going to look to execute a similar game plan here. Stipe, a much better grappler and defensive wrestler than Cyril Gahn, but still just a 68% takedown defense. And at this point in his career, I mean, you got to wonder how he's going to do in terms of physicality, his knees, footwork, which was a major strength for Stipe throughout most of his career, especially in defending takedowns. He's slowed down. There's just no denying it. Jones, he slowed down a bit as well, but his style over the years, I mean, he kind of played into that during his late light heavyweight career and obviously into this heavyweight run now. He's going to look to lean on his strengths, which are going to be his grappling here. I think if this fight takes place at boxing range, the line's absolutely ridiculous. Stipe, the better technical boxer, but when you go outside of that boxing range or inside of that boxing range, Jones is the better striker. So when they're in the clinch, Jones is going to be very dangerous, elbows, knees, etc. And then when they're way at range, Jones throwing his oblique kicks, things like that, keeps up the middle. He's going to have a major advantage there as well. I think Jones gets it done here. I mean, the one fear, I guess, is all this talk about Aspinall. Maybe he's overlooking Stipe a little. Like, he doesn't want the Aspinall fight. Regardless, I think the way the media's kind of spun this, it's like this should be a walkover for him. And I mean, we're looking at the price minus 600 all the way up to minus 700 in some books. This the bookmakers are telling us he should absolutely run through him here. That's what I think happens. I think we see Jones likely take Stipe down, probably finishes him via ground and pound the first couple rounds. But if he doesn't and this fight gets extended, I mean, Stipe's never had cardio issues, neither has Jones really. But who's to say that Stipe didn't put in the better camp? I don't think we can really know that for sure. Both these guys, obviously, tough to get a true beat on at this point in their career. Stipe is still a firefighter, kind of tough to juggle being one of the best heavyweights in the world and a job like that at the same time. But Jones, I mean, he has his own extracurricular activities that he's been kind of engaging in, and one would argue less probably productive than firefighting. So I like Jones here. I think he gets it done. I think probably inside the distance. I'm thinking second or third round though. I don't think he's just going to run through him like he did Cyril Gahn. Stipe, at least in the first round or two, should have enough to kind of keep himself safe. But as this fight wears on, I just think Jones's size and just hunger at this point in their career will be enough for him to kind of walk over this test. I don't want to knock Jones. I know this kind of sounds like I am. He is one of my favorite fighters ever. As bad of a person as he may be outside of the octagon, I'm not really looking to like cage fighters for moral superiority or a moral compass. Like he's a bad dude, and I mean that's kind of what you want to see in a cage. So I'm happy to back John Jones here. I just really hope he fights Aspinall. I think Aspinall probably beats him at this point, and especially with the way Jones is talking about it, he's like, this guy's way younger than me, 30 pounds heavier, blah, blah, blah. Like, that's not the John Jones that we knew. Like, Jones would just kind of speak things into existence early in his career, even when he was afraid in certain spots. Like, he'd really just down his opponent's skills more than just saying, oh, he's a bad guy. Like, he's saying now that he doesn't want to take the fight because Tom's kind of a prick or whatever, using a replacement word. But yeah, I mean, you look at these guys and what they've done outside of the cage, it's very easy to argue Jones is actually the guy with the questionable character. So I'm taking Jones here. I spent a lot of time on everything but the fight. But in terms of X's and O's, I do think he gets the grappling going. I think he's going to be the more dangerous striker, and he's always had a solid chin. So even if Stipe does catch him in a boxing exchange, I don't think it's going to be enough to end this fight. Jones should get it done probably second or third round, ground and pound TKO is where I'm at.
I'm definitely taking John Jones in this fight too. You look at it, it's really tough to play at the current number. Miocic is getting disrespected. You look at Jones' last fight, minus 180, the favorite against the likes of Cyril Gahn, and now against the former heavyweight champion, somebody who's been a staple of the division for so long. It really is an unwarranted price tag. I think it is telling you, 85, 90% of the time, it is just going to be Jones walking through Miocic, but certainly some qualifying value at this number on Miocic, just given the fact he has been in there with, competition of Jones' caliber before, and certainly, held his own. At this stage of his career, both guys up there in age. Jones likely a step quicker at this point than Miocic, and certainly a wider arsenal of weapons to draw upon. Stipe always finding success with his boxing. He's going to, oblige Jones in the stand-up here as long as he can. And Stipe is somebody who sometimes draws out those brawls a bit longer than he even needs to. He really is willing to just go in, throw hands, and continue to move forward, extending combinations longer than his opponents do. Against a guy like John Jones, somebody benefiting from a 4-inch edge in reach, longest reach in the UFC, he should be able to use that to pretty good effect here against Miocic. Really looks slow out the gate, very lackluster with his hands in that fight against Cyril Gahn, but obviously it wasn't something he really needed to implement. I think we see more of Jones striking at heavyweight in this matchup. Although obviously you'd like him to take the path of least resistance, get in there in the clinch with Stipe, try and get him to the mat if possible. With the introduction of the 12-6 elbows, something Jones has already said he looks to go ahead and execute now that he is allowed to in the cage. And I think he's one of the fighters on this card that certainly could see benefit from that rule come this weekend. But yeah, bottom line here in this fight, John Jones, he's abused steroids the past 2 decades. He's a cheater. He'll find a way to win no matter what. And that's the guy you want to put your money on, whether it's going to be poking eyes or, kicking guys in the oblique, dirty attacks, getting moles in their camp to get any insight he can on them. Dude's just will do whatever it takes to win. And that's the guy that you're going to trust at the end of the night. I was all over Jones in that fight against Cyril Gahn. Again, that was a much easier number to play as he balloons up to minus 700. It's hard to, go to the window with Jones, but certainly he's going to be closing out my parlays. And yeah, I'm with you. I'm going to be taking him inside the distance. Miocic's obviously flatlined by Ngannou in his last time out. Certainly we've seen him touched up before, even in his earlier career at heavyweight. And yeah, well, Jones' power isn't necessarily a huge threat on the feet. This does go to the mat, if he's landing ground and pound, Miocic was struggling in some positions, even with not as effective a technical wrestler when he faced Ngannou. I really do think Jones should be able to control him on the mat, although Miocic has pretty good takedown defense when it comes to defending that initial shot. Jones will find a way down, probably not with a traditional single or double leg takedown. So, yeah, I'm with you, Jon Jones, and still, in regards to his next fight, I really am not convinced we see him in the cage with Aspinall. If he wins this one, it could be the last time we see Jon Jones compete in the UFC. I think a fight with Alex Pereira is intriguing to me. Dana White saying that won't happen. It probably won't happen. But if Pereira continues to win and Jones is going to take another 2 or 3 years off, I think that is one we could get down the line. Really, I think Jones would like to be released. And, while that fight with Ngannou never materialized in the promotion, it could come to fruition one day outside of the UFC ring. But nonetheless, he has a fight in front of him this weekend. All this talk about Aspinall or the next opponent, as you said, you can't count this one as done yet. Miocic is still a talented opponent. You got to give him the respect he deserves. But yep, it's Jon Jones and still at MSG. We'll look now at the co-main event. This one, a banger at lightweight. A rematch of a UFC 262 bout that saw Charles Oliveira earn the vacant UFC lightweight championship against Michael Chandler. This time around, Oliveira, the minus 260 favorite against Chandler, who can be had near 2-1. It's a super interesting fight. I mean, Chandler has now had quite a layoff himself, 2 years removed from competition, waiting for his bout with Conor McGregor, a fight that did not materialize. Now he's stepping in, facing Oliveira here in a rematch, and a fight that he had controlled for the most part. That first meeting with Oliveira, knocking him down, looked like he really had him hurt there in the first round. Also maneuvering well in the initial grappling exchange that we did see. Oliveira taking Chandler's back, but then Chandler able to navigate into top position and getting out of that compromising spot against such a lethal submission threat. Again, Oliveira always dangerous with his hands, his Muay Thai, somebody who could easily go in and spark Chandler once again, but a decisive grappling advantage is what has him the considerable favorite in this matchup, and that's my thought as to, again, picking him here. We saw him get it done with his hands last time out against Chandler, but again, just jiu-jitsu levels so much higher than the wrestler. While Chandler has proven very capable of defending submissions for some time on the mat, we've also seen him subbed since joining the UFC on a few occasions. And yeah, with Oliveira is able to implement that when the fight hits the mat, gives him the edge. Chandler's power is obviously a concern. I saw numbers like 9-1, Chandler first round knockout. That would be the way he wins this fight. Again, able to tag Oliveira in their first meeting. Normally, somebody who burns super hot, fired out of the gate, and giving his all in the first 5 minutes of the fight. So I think it's going to be that early storm again from Chandler, whether Oliveira meets him, drops him, connects, gets dropped himself in that first round. But yeah, as this fight plays out, we've seen Chandler fade, completely overexert himself, get into positions he's not able to recover from. I'm picking Oliveira again. Scary because he got it done the first time despite getting dropped. But yeah, I think Oliveira is able to get the win again here over an opponent that he is just much technically better than.
I mean, I agree with most of what you're saying. Not all of it, though. I don't think when you say he's much better technically that that's necessarily true. I just think Michael Chandler doesn't really know how to fight to his strengths. Chandler is a really good wrestler. Chandler probably is the better technical boxing here. Chandler has power, and he's a good enough grappler that he should be able to stay safe. But he's not going to fight smart. He never does. I mean, we've never seen him do it in the UFC. You can go back to his time in Bellator. We never really saw it there. He did have Oliveira on the ropes the first time these two met, which makes his number seem a little bit wide. I mean, different referee. Maybe that fight gets called. I think I want to keep an eye on who the ref is here. That could certainly matter. But yeah, I mean, Oliveira has just shown that he's willing to go in there, have the firefight. If he gets knocked down, he's going to fall to his back and just hope he can catch you in his guard. Um, and yeah, I mean, he has enough power on the feet. He's going to have a reach advantage here. Chandler does throw a lot of these looping hooks, which for someone like Charles, who does throw well straight up the middle, he's going to be there to be countered. So I do think Oliveira is certainly the rightful favorite here. But at the same time, I mean, this is more volatile than probably the price we're looking at right now. Chandler's super locked in. I mean, he looks amazing. You saw it gone. I mean, Chandler's always been kind of a guy who maybe we thought was on something, but both these guys maybe are. Who knows? Who cares? Regardless, I mean, all that time out waiting for McGregor, training for McGregor, he's been locked in. He's been in camp. I mean, he hasn't had a fight, but it's not like he's out partying or I don't know, doing the things that McGregor's doing. And it seems like he has a huge chip on his shoulder now. He took this fight against an opponent who's beat him before because he knows that he's capable of winning it. I mean, right now my lean is Oliveira, but I want to see how weigh-ins look tomorrow. I mean, Oliveira looks a little bit bigger than usual. Maybe he is a rough weight cut, in which case that first shot or two from Chandler might be enough to finish the fight. At this price, I don't know that I love the money line of minus 250, minus 270. You could play them under 2.5 right now. It's only out on a couple books for the exact same price as the Oliveira money line. I'm much more comfortable going to just the under 2.5. But yeah, I think Oliveira has the skills to get it done. If he is knocked down, he's going to be very dangerous on the mat. And we have seen Chandler fade time and time again. It's just like you said, who's to say he can't get it done in the first round if he comes out a little bit sharper here than he did that first time and makes the right decisions in the heat of battle, which he often doesn't. So I'm with you. Oliveira is certainly the rightful favorite, as we've seen this fight before. The more active fighter, a little bit longer, has a few intangibles in his favor as well. Chandler getting up there in age. But at the same time, I mean, I don't want to totally overlook Chandler. He's definitely live for the upset. If you rewatch that first fight, amazing for how long it lasted back and forth. Chandler definitely had his moments. So yeah, I'm on Charles right now. If he has a terrible weigh-in, I could maybe see myself flipping the pick. Probably doesn't happen. But I'm definitely more comfortable betting in under 2.5 here than I am Charles Oliveira pushing 260, 270 on the money. Really, really fun fight though, for however long it lasts. I mean, we've seen it before, but I'm looking forward to it once again. But I'm on Charles for now, but proceed with some caution. Definitely a volatile matchup between two very potent finishers.
I definitely like that look on the under 2.5 rounds. Yeah, can definitely see that cashing. All right, next up, we will look at this fight at middleweight between Bo Nickal, the minus 1,300 favorite, and Paul Craig, who could be had at 8-1. I mean, this matchup, obviously Nickal on the ascent here, up the middleweight rankings, now fighting again Paul Craig, who is a more known name, staple of the division, light heavyweight as well. Honestly, I view Craig as a live underdog in this matchup. It's obviously going to be tough for him to deal with Nickal's extremely high level wrestling. Just Craig is the kind of guy that, when put into those grappling exchanges, tends to find a way to pull off the submission win. That being said, Nickal, very intelligent fighter, high fight IQ, growing up like focused on an MMA career. He should know what he's getting into here, facing a lethal jiu-jitsu practitioner such as Paul Craig, with so many submission wins to his credit. Nickal's going to want to smother Craig the best that he can, give him no space to work, no space to swing his legs around or attempt arm bars, triangles here. And yeah, it's going to be difficult for Nickal to really find an exciting finish in this fight early. If he's looking to rain down blows on Craig, he could get his arm caught. I'd like to see some short elbows from Nickal, perhaps some 12-6s landing as he's down on top of Craig on the mat, because it's very likely that the Scottish fighter will cede his guard, fall to the mat if Nickal does go ahead and attempt takedowns. Nickal could keep this fight standing. Craig on the feet, somebody who does not have a great chin and somebody who is moving rather slow. I think Nickal, athletic young guy, clearly showcasing his hands a bit more in his fights now. If he wants to, I think he can keep it standing with Craig and touch him up there too. So I think he should be able to cruise in this matchup as long as he fights smart. Just again, very tough for me to bet Nickal tonight at minus 1300. Again, even looking at under props, if he wants to fight a safer game plan, could easily see this going over the 1.5 rounds that's probably listed, as was the case in his last fight against an even lower level opponent. So, yeah, I think Nickal certainly wins. I just don't think I'm going to pull the trigger here, despite the fact Craig's kind of dusted at this point.
Yeah, I mean, when you get to this level, really no one should be a minus 1200, minus 1300 favorite. We've seen guys hurt their knee, guys jumping up and down before the fight even starts, tearing ligaments, things like that. So it's never really wise to play anyone at this type of money line, especially a guy like Paul Craig, who's been ranked in multiple divisions before. I do think Nickal gets it done here for a few reasons. And first and foremost, I think the UFC obviously knows what they're doing. Like, they're putting Nickal here on this John Jones card, who's going to get a lot of casual eyes. They're trying to build this guy up as a prospect. He opened UFC 300. They have their marketing machine fully behind him, and they're really not trying to match him up to lose anytime soon against someone like Paul Craig, who seems to be on the way out, if we're being honest. He only won one of his last four, only won one of the division, dropping back-to-back fights against tough opponents, but really not a guy we expect to be competing. And for me, I just think Nickal would be smart to keep this fight standing. I don't think he's some awesome striker by any stretch, but Paul Craig is just so slow on the feet, telegraphs everything, only 44% striking defense, one of the worst numbers in the division, ranked or not, absorbing nearly 3 significant strikes per minute compared to Bo just absorbing that half a strike. Obviously, those numbers are pretty skewed given the level of competition he's been facing, but I think you can pick him apart on the feet here, and you're getting him to win by KO around minus 150. I mean, we're looking at a minus 1300, 1400. I mean, could he get the sub on Craig? Sure. You're probably getting some plus money on that, but I think by KO, and it could come via ground and pound as well. Like you said, I think that's the way to play it. I just think we see him standing here, and I think he probably takes Paul Craig out on the feet. And if Craig's trying to pull guard, just shuck him or throw him off. Or if you fall into the guard, just make him stand up. Craig does not want to strike with anybody um, at all. And the fights he's winning, he's catching these guys in these crazy grappling exchanges, but he's so much better at jujitsu than his opponents. I mean, Nickal obviously not quite the jujitsu player that Paul Craig is, but his wrestling should be able to mostly negate that. We've seen throughout the years, I mean, as recent as Makhachev against Oliveira, I mean, the better wrestler usually wins the ground exchanges more often than not, and I just think Nickal can keep this standing. Craig has chin issues. We've seen him KO'd countless times. And again, the UFC, just what are they trying to do here? They're trying to build a star feature bout on the pay per view of a John Jones card in MSG. I think they want Nickal to get the KO, and I think he probably finds it.
All right, definitely with you on that one. We'll move on now to this matchup coming at women's flyweight. This between Karine Silva and Viviane Araujo. Silva, the minus 280 favorite in the spot against Araujo, who could be had plus 220. What are your thoughts on this matchup?
Yeah, I mean the line's a little bit wide. I think Araujo is better than maybe this price is suggesting. She has been dropping fights recently, but it's still really, really high level competition. Grasso, who's fought for the belt, Ribas, really big time prospect, Natalie Silva, another super prospect coming off a few huge wins. So, I mean, Araujo's kind of become like the top five gatekeeper in this division, which is obviously not a place you want to be, but at the same time, I mean, the level of competition's been there consistently. I just think Silva's probably going to be able to get her grappling going here. Araujo does have decent takedown defense, but as she's getting up there in age, it is certainly starting to fade a little bit. Ribas, I mean, obviously great jujitsu, not the best wrestler. She didn't have much trouble taking Araujo down. I think Karine probably has that same success here, but I'm a little bit more confident in Karine Silva as well, coming off a decision. Prior to that, I mean, we haven't really seen her extended. We were wondering if she'd have decent cardio. And yeah, it held up pretty well in her last fight. So I'm fine going to Karine here. Don't love the price. Again, we're looking at two women who have faced very different levels of competition. Araujo's been in there against the best of the best, but I think Karine is as good as she's being tested here, and I think she is going to pass this test. Definitely needs to lean on her grappling, but she does average almost 3.6 takedowns per 15 minutes. She should be able to control this fight on top. She's just very tough to kind of get out from under, and yeah, I think Karine gets it done here. Just a younger fighter. I do respect Araujo enough, probably not to tie Karine into all my parlays or anything like that, but this is two women whose careers are headed in opposite directions. Karine continues to build as a name. Araujo She's been good. She's been great for the promotion, but she's really kind of this gatekeeper now, and I think Silver probably gets through this gate.
Yeah, I mean, Araujo, you look at her last fight against Natalia Silva. Silva's like a minus 350 in that spot. I think Karine is a few steps behind at this point, but certainly a prospect I'm also pretty high on. 4-0 since joining the UFC, looking rather solid. Obviously, the grappling she was able to put on display in her last fight, impressive. Obviously, moving in the right direction in terms of developing her skill set, whereas Araujo at this point, I think we've seen all of what we're really going to get out of her and her ceiling. Again, at this number, certainly a live play. A fight that one would think is going to see the judges' scorecards, but it's going to be hard for Araujo to win very many minutes when it comes to this fight on the feet. I think Silva's speed gives her a bit of an edge in terms of overall activity, and the strikes that she'll connect with should outpace Araujo here. And then again, on the mat, she's probably going to be the one in top position for a large majority of this fight if these two are going to engage grappling. Um, yeah, so Brazil against Brazil, I think Rene Silva, again, somebody that they could sort of build upon on a previous pay-per-view card previously. And yeah, again, facing Araujo, somebody that one would expect if you are going to have a long reign at a women's flyweight, Araujo is somebody you should be able to get past. I'm with you on that one. Probably not a fight I'm going to be playing super heavily, just with the other options available on this card. All right. Next up, we have a fight opening the main card, 10 p.m. pay-per-view. Mauricio Ruffy, minus 1,000 favorite, taking on James Liontop here. This is the fight scheduled at lightweight, now taking place at 165-pound catchweight. We'll see if both men make weight. My assumption is Liontop taking this on a bit of short notice. Probably the one needing the extra allowance here, but neither one of these guys are that big. Um, Ruffy, 10-1 professional, looked incredible in his last fight. Superb offensive striking. He's a guy with just very crisp boxing, great combinations. He uses his length very well for a lightweight. And obviously representing the Fighting Nerds team, which is just on fire recently. Ruffy's a guy with very good speed, fighting often out of the orthodox stance, but also effective switching and really diversifying his attacks, going low against his opponents, hitting them to the body, the head. He's somebody that certainly, when given space, he's going to make you look like a fool out there, touching you up, and just deadly accurate with his hands from what we've seen thus far. One top's a guy, a brawler, somebody who's not afraid to get into it, somebody who should be, oftentimes looking to engage with opponents on the feet. But in this matchup with Ruffy, he will lean on his grappling much more here, as I think it's going to be a decisive edge for Ruffy when this fight is standing. We haven't seen any deficiencies in Ruffy's takedown defense, his ability to stuff shots, get on top, and very good grappling as well. So it appears this guy has no holes. Minus 1,000, I think, is pretty crazy just because we really haven't seen him run through any guys at a very high level thus far. But Liontop isn't either. He's somebody like a fringe roster guy, in my opinion. And yeah, certainly while he's a live underdog in the spot, it's tough to imagine him finding a clear path to victory here. I mean, perhaps Ruffy with pretty low volume attacks, confidence in his power when his strikes land. Liontop could get it over on him just based on volume if this were to go to a decision. But yeah, I think Ruffy's going to be able to land a couple clean snipes in this fight that'll drop Liontop to the mat. Certainly what we've seen of him thus far, his footwork, his accuracy. He seems to be on a higher level than the guys he's faced thus far. So no reason to expect Ruffy to run into trouble in this matchup.
Yeah, I'm on the Ruffy side. He's certainly the rightful favorite. Obviously, fighting nerds on fire, et cetera, et cetera. I will say this: I mean, Lontop's never been KO'd before. Guy definitely has a chin. Coming off that war against Borshev, aka Slava Claus. I mean, he gave a good showing of himself in that fight, and he didn't get it done, but he was competitive against a really talented striker. Ruffy, I mean, people like comparing him to McGregor because he kind of fights into that karate stance. Has the beard, has the tattoos. He is a lightweight. I mean, that's about where the similarities end. But at the same time, I mean, this does feel like a matchup. You should be able to get it done. And I guess my one concern at this price is just maybe people are thinking to chase the KO. And I think that's the most likely outcome here. I'm probably going to take Ruffy by KO in terms of the article, everything like that. But in terms of betting it, I mean, having never seen Liontop KO before, I mean, it gives me some pause. Um, Obviously, this is a different type of striker than what he's been dealing with lately, but he's shown he can take a lot of shots. I mean, absorbing around 4 significant strikes per minute against Borchev. And yeah, I don't know. I like Ruffy and I like the fighting nerds. I just don't know that Ruffy is as good as some of these other guys just because we haven't seen him tested as much as the Morellos or the Pradas, etc. But again, we got to kind of put our UFC hat on in terms of matchmaking, things like that. He's opening the pay per view, right? He's taking on a guy on short notice. He's a huge favorite out of a really hot camp off a week where his teammate just won via KO in the Apex. He's a main eventer. I think the UFC wants kind of that highlight reel KO here. He was originally scheduled to take Charlie Campbell on. Campbell, talented fighter, but he's chinny, and when he gets knocked out, it looks very pretty for his opponent. I don't know that Liontop is going to really present that same highlight that maybe Campbell could have. I do think Ruffy gets it done. Probably dominates this fight at range, but Liontop's a tough dude, man. And I don't know. Depending on who, again, is refereeing, I don't know that I have a certain lean on any certain ref or anything like that, but I don't know. I mean, I could just see him kind of taking a lot of damage. The one thing I will say is there have been a bunch of TKOs for Ruffy. So, like, he's not putting guys out cold, but he's just putting on so much damage that the refs have to call it. I'm thinking that's most likely what we see here. Maybe you could take the over 1.5 if you're looking for a decent price on something. Again, just betting on Lontop's chin, moving up a weight class. I do think he has pretty good durability, at least what we've seen from him to this point. Ruffy definitely has the power to knock a guy out. I don't think it comes that easy, though. So I like Ruffy here. I think he gets it done. I agree with you. The money line's a little bit crazy just because we haven't seen him tested against this or a very high level of opponent, but definitely the side here. Fighting nerds continue to roll. But yeah, Liontop tougher than I think maybe the bookmakers are giving him credit for.
Yeah, and again, my point with Ruffy's volume sometimes being a bit limited. Don't hate the look on the over 1.5. If you were looking to play Ruffy by decision, could almost get like plus 240 on that prop as well. So certainly better than laying minus 1,000 on anyone. All right. The featured prelim, this is a fight that I'm excited to dig into. Marcus McGhee, the minus 140 favorite, against Jonathan Martinez, who could be had plus 115. I don't know. Knowing you, knowing me, I was very excited when I started digging into this matchup. I think this is going to be a banger of a fight. Big step up in competition for McGhee, who has looked awesome since joining the UFC. But again, this is an opponent that's going to oblige him in a kickboxing match, and we've seen Martinez in there with just a lot of high-level bantamweights doing his thing, throwing great kicks, and yeah, really extending those sorts of fights in which he is able to just go back and forth, trading heavy shots, racking up damage on his opponent, and obviously eating what is sent back his way. I think that's kind of the deciding factor. What we've seen out of McGhee is pretty high level durability, his ability to take big punches, and in terms of just pure punching power as well, I would give him a slight edge over Martinez. My fear for this fight is if these two do end up in a prolonged fight, perhaps going to decision, Martinez landing the higher volume, and with more strikes landing, also accruing more damage on McGhee over the course of 15 minutes. Particularly, I'm worried about those leg kicks from Martinez, lighting up McGhee, limiting his movement, and making it a much more easy target to connect with over and over. Certainly, McGhee with his power gives him that out in this matchup, but I think his grappling as well, training at the MMA lab, super high level when it comes to his jiu-jitsu. Not something we've really seen displayed too much in the UFC, but when he's gotten guys down, he's kept good control. And Martinez is somebody that I think he could end up testing as this fight goes to the mat. So, as the short favorite in this fight, I think the rightful favorite, Marcus McGhee, but it is a very close matchup. One that I would line near Pickham, and one that I'm still a bit torn on deciding. But my current lean is McGhee. I'm riding this hot streak. He's a guy I like to watch. Puts on fun fights, and again, just a bit more aggressive and confident that his power will connect before his opponents. I think, again, one thing to mention, the old gloves coming back too. Maybe not a huge factor at bantamweight, lightweight, but I certainly could see a few more knockouts coming to fruition here today. So I like McGhee ever so slightly. Curious to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, you froze for a second there, but I think we're good now. I'm with you. I do think McGee's a side, but at the same time, I mean, you got to kind of proceed with some caution. Martinez has been taking on the better level of opponent, but when you watch film for these guys, I mean, the question is this: does McGhee check leg kicks? The answer is yes. He does know how to check leg kicks. We've seen it before, going back to early in the Newsom fight, in the Bolanos fight a little bit, and back when he was fighting for LFA. That's really the key here. Martinez's greatest weapon are those leg kicks on the feet. I mean, Martinez is going to be the crisper boxer, but at the same time, McGee's defended more than 70% of the strikes thrown against him. And like you said, I think he is going to be able to mix in the grappling here, and that's where his big advantage is going to shine through. So I kind of think Martinez looks good early here, almost probably wins the first round at a decent clip. But McGhee, I mean, his head is huge for a bantamweight. Seems to be very durable. I really just like everything we've seen from him to this point. So while he hasn't taken on an opponent of Martinez's level yet, I think this is a test he probably does manage to pass. He's going to have to mix in the grappling. He's going to have to check the leg kicks. If either of those things don't take place, Martinez, one of the better underdogs on this card, which is full of a lot of juicy favorites. But I'm with you, man. I do think McGhee probably gets it done. Martinez, really good fighter. We do see him fade at times late in fights. McGee's pressure and pace is really excellent. I think it could be tough for him as this fight wears on. So maybe a better live entry. Like I could see Martinez winning the first round and then taking McGhee around plus 200, something like that as we get into the second. But yeah, pre-start the fight, I am on the McGhee side. Again, just more well-rounded. And the key for him here will be checking those leg kicks, something he does seem to do when you watch his regional film and his early UFC fights. Martinez's leg kicks are unlike anything he's seen before, but he's very, very much aware that's what he's dealing with here. So I do think McGhee gets it done.
All right. Moving on now, we will look at this matchup at middleweight between Eryk Anders and Chris Weidman. Anders, the minus 140 favorite in this spot against Weidman, who could be had at plus 115. Not the most exciting of matchups here to break down. Two guys that really have not, well, Weidman, obviously, successful UFC career, but now a bit over the hill. His last Octagon appearance, a win, but he really looked like shit in that matchup against Bruno Silva, winning thanks to quite a few eye pokes. Really, it was going to be a different fight if not for Weidman getting his fingers involved there. But yeah, we got a 16-7 fighter here facing a fighter that's 16-8 as a professional. Anders is somebody that I rarely back, but against lower level opponents, he certainly is able to use his athleticism to find his way to a win. Oftentimes, a lot of minutes in the clinch for Anders along the side of the cage, using his size to an advantage there. Against an All-American wrestler like Chris Weidman, I really don't think that's going to come to effect in this matchup, but it's probably a fight that plays out more so on the feet. Weidman would likely want to get this fight to the mat if able to do so, but Anders' takedown defense has not been the worst. Anders on the feet, one would think, is hitting harder than Weidman at this stage of his career and is certainly much faster. So if he's able to put together a couple clean combinations, he could take a decisive lead in this matchup. Weidman, though, still proving very tough to finish. It's a super volatile matchup, not one I want any money on, really. I'm leaning Anders as a slight favorite. It's just very tough to back Weidman, in my opinion, at this stage of his career. There's certain stylistic matchups that I think he would really benefit still fighting at middleweight. But Anders is not a guy that I think he could just go ahead and smother. So yeah, I can't get to the window with Chris Weidman. My pick in this fight will reluctantly be Eryk Anders.
I mean, this is a bad fight. Yeah, obviously Weidman had his prime. It's kind of come and gone though. I mean, a big intangible here though is that he's fighting in front of his home crowd. Native New Yorker fighting in MSG. Crowd's going to be behind him in a big, big way. Eryk Anders, I mean, for a former national champion linebacker at Alabama, everyone likes to talk about his athleticism, but he's kind of slow. Weidman, obviously one of the slowest guys in the division on the feet, but the UFC definitely giving Weidman a fight he could maybe potentially win here. Is still the better grappler. After all these knee surgeries, I don't know how much he's going to be looking to engage in that part of his game. But kind of funny, we didn't talk about this more in the Jones fight. Going back to the old gloves, I mean, the one thing the new gloves seem to do is kind of curb these eye pokes a little bit. Weidman's last win against Silva, 1-2 rounds, mostly on the backs of eye pokes. Maybe they just let him poke Anders' eyes out here in front of his home crowd and get another controversial win that way. Um, Anders, for such a big and explosive guy, though, really hasn't shown a ton of power. Um, yeah, I don't know, man. He has a ground and pound KO over Doc has since been cut from the promotion. I mean, that's probably the best KO on his record. And then we're talking about Weidman. He's up there in age, but he's a tough dude, man. I mean, he's willing to fight with blown out knees, and he'll take a ton of shots to the head and keep going. Um, so yeah, I again, I'm with you. Don't if there's a fight on this card to just not bet and completely avoid, it's probably this one. I will say I lean Weidman for now, just because he is in front of his home crowd. This is probably a low volume striking affair, and if Weidman does choose to mix in his grappling, he's going to have the advantage there. So maybe a takedown or two is all he needs to get this done on the cards. But yeah, super low confidence play. Really can't rate either of these guys at this point in their respective careers. I mean, Weidman's certainly seen the higher peaks. Anders, though, only 3 years younger, so it's not like some huge age gap like we've seen in a lot of these Weidman fights. I'll go with Weidman here. Very, very, very low confidence play, though. Maybe we get something out of weigh-ins that makes us sway either way. But yeah, very, very volatile fight. Likely low volume striking, which is always tough to call. So I'll go with Weidman, but don't recommend anyone tailing.
Yeah, I hope you guys enjoy watching that one. We'll move on now to this matchup at lightweight between Damon Jackson and Jim Miller. Damon Jackson, the minus 170 favorite in this spot against Miller, who could be had plus 140. Miller's last time out, UFC 300 facing King Bobby Green. Not a great performance. He really got his ass beat there, looking pretty slow. He still cracks with huge power for lightweight. He connects with a lot of guys. He's able to find his hands in a lot of these matchups just by biting down on the mouthpiece and being there in the brawl. Jackson's going to be a tough opponent for him. I could see Miller finding a lot of success here when the fight hits the mat. Jackson is somebody who does look to execute a grappling heavy game plan at times. When it comes to comparing these two on the feet, though, I do give Jackson the edge. I think he is probably the rightful favorite for that reason. He's not proven nearly as durable as Jim Miller, but he is quicker. He's longer. He switches stances more. He mixes in a lot more diversified attacks. And yeah, when it comes to his grappling, he's more consistent than Miller is. Miller, a guy who obviously savvy veteran, able to catch submission wins, able to land timely reversals. But Jackson just far more consistent when it comes to his grappling. He wants to live in a dominant position, whether controlling the back of his opponents or maneuvering to a half guard position where he can do some work. I think that is where he'll want to put Miller in this fight. But again, when it comes to these periods of time when those two are standing and exchanging blows on the feet, I do think Jackson has a propensity to land a bit more than Miller. Again, it's just the chin that really worries me. Probably why I won't get to the window on Jackson if he does end up being my official pick. Just Miller's still able to crack, and Jackson, a guy who we've seen take a single punch before and crumple to the mat. So again, not a fight I'm super involved in, but I lean ever so slightly with Jackson. Tough for me to get to the window with Miller after that last performance, even though I do rate King Green much higher than I do Damon Jackson.
Yeah, this is a tough one for me. Certainly a fight that I'd recommend reading the article on Saturday because I'm far from decided. The thing that makes this difficult is the fact that Jackson is moving up a weight class. I mean, he's been fighting primarily down at 145 pounds. He's still going to have kind of a height and reach advantage here slightly, but moving up a weight class, I mean, Miller's often outsized by a lot of guys at 155. That's not going to be the case here. Is getting up there in age, was completely picked apart on the feet by a Bobby Green, but Green, one of the better technical boxers. Miller decided to engage in that exact type of fight with him, probably because it was UFC 300 and wanted to put on a show. But yeah, that ultimately cost him. Took a ton of damage, but like you said, very durable in that fight. For all the shots he ate, he did good to kind of last until the scorecards. Jackson, like you said, a little bit chinny. Probably the better wrestler here at this point in these guys' career. I mean, Miller is a good jiu-jitsu player, but at 41 years old, I mean, his cardio does deplete quickly when he starts to engage in that part of his game. I mean, both these guys have a common opponent recently in Anthony Hernandez. Jackson got the nod in that fight. Super controversial split, though. Miller lost. To Hernandez, but again, a very narrow decision. So with Jackson moving up a weight class, I do actually think there could be some value on Miller here. From New Jersey, another guy who's going to have the home crowd behind him in a big way. I kind of like Miller here, just more at the number than anything else, but even less so than Weidman. Like, I don't know. I just don't feel great about it. You're just getting better value than maybe you are on Chris Weidman. Plus 150. I don't know. I'll probably take a shot on that. But at the same time, I mean, Jackson still faster, more dynamic on the feet right now. Miller has shown a lot of power at 155 that he didn't earlier in his career, but I don't know. I don't know that it's going to be enough here necessarily. So I'm siding with Miller slightly, but similar to the last fight, just can't really have a confident lean either way.
Alrighty. Next up, we will look at the preliminary opener, a fight at featherweight between David Onama and Roberto Romero. Onama, the sizable favorite in this matchup, as Romero enters the fight on short notice. Onama was originally scheduled to face Lucas Almeida in this spot, and he was even minus 250 in that matchup. So, as the big favorite here against Romero, one would expect Onama to get the job done. Onama, what we've seen out of him, capable everywhere the fight goes. Obviously, very good with his hands, powerful, but becoming very confident when it comes to his grappling as well. Against this guy Romero, somebody who I've seen fight a bit, good with his hands. A Team Oyama fighter, just 24 years old, but still it appears a lot more developing to do. The short notice nature of this fight is what's getting him into the UFC, but I do not think he is quite ready, especially for the level of competition that Onama will be. This is the 41st ranked regional featherweight in the United States. It's not reasonable to expect that his grappling is going to hold up against that of Onama. I think in this fight, we should see a much bigger, stronger, full camp fighter really do what he wants to do against an opponent that primarily will look to do his work with his hands. Romero obviously puncher's chance, but here at featherweight, I think that knockout is probably unlikely to materialize. Onama should be able to fight smart, keep his distance early. And yeah, I like to either sit back and counter in this fight or look to get his grappling going. I think that'll be the path to victory for him, taking Romero down and working him there.
Yeah, I'm with you. Another fight with a crazy wide line. This one mostly justified, seeing minus 900 and minus 1,000 most books. Romero, I mean, for a 24-year-old, he's actually pretty good. I think he could maybe even find takedowns early here. I just don't think he's going to be able to keep Onama grounded. Onama's grappling has come such a long way. That last fight against Jonathan Pierce, reversing him multiple times. I mean, that's no easy task. And while Romero does seem to have some skills, I don't think he's a grappler on the level of Pierce. And on the feet, I mean, we've seen Onama take a lot of damage, like in a lot of fights, going back to Santos, Landwehr, way back when he fought Mason Jones, Benitez. I mean, this is a guy who can eat shots and keep coming forward. He has the cardio to go 3 rounds. So no matter what, like even if Romero does somehow find early success here, I think Onama is just going to prove to be too tough of a test. Like you can't just run through a guy like this. Romero, decent level of regional opponent fighting for Combate, but it's not like he's running through guys there. And Onama, just a crazy, crazy step up to take on short notice. So, well, the line is a little bit wide. He should be able to get it done. And yeah, I think Romero probably has a decent future in the sport, but we're not going to see that from him in quite some time. Certainly not fighting a guy like Onama, who's kind of borderline ranked at this point. Not quite a ranked fighter, but probably a win or two away from getting there. So I like Onama here, probably to get it done inside the distance. Romero doesn't seem like an easy guy to finish, but again, short notice, excellent cardio, durability. I mean, Onama checks a lot of boxes in this one. I expect him to roll.
All right. Next, let's discuss this matchup at heavyweight between Marcin Tybura and Jhonata Diniz. Tybura steaming to a minus 145 favorite here against Diniz, who could be had plus 120. Diniz scheduled last month to face Derek Lewis, or just a few weeks ago, faced Derek Lewis, and what was certainly an intriguing bout between two heavy-handed strikers. This, instead, a matchup between striker and grappler as he takes on Tybura. Tybura coming off a loss in his last fight, the main event against Sergey Spivak, that saw him submitted by armbar in round one. Tybura is going to have a decisive edge grappling here in this fight against Jhonata Diniz. It will just be a matter of if he is able to take Diniz down before those heavy shots begin to land. Diniz in his last fight rather impressive, beating a proficient grappler in Carl Williams. But a guy that really did not shoot enough. He went 0 for 2 in takedowns round one against Diniz, shot 0 times in round two, and then landed 2 of 3 takedowns in round three. I would think if Tybura is able to execute that grappling heavy approach in this fight, he should be able to get on top of Diniz, wear on him, really make him work much more than Carl Williams did. Tybura should know he does not have the speed or the striking skills to compete with Diniz when this fight is standing. So I do expect him to very quickly pour on the pressure and look to get Diniz engaged in the grappling here. Diniz is quick, very good kickboxing. I mean, honestly, this guy can put together long combinations, and against these big plotting heavyweights, I could see him having a ton of success. This stylistic matchup is just going to be the first true test for him against a grappler if Tybura does elect to take him down at a higher rate than Carl Williams did. So at these odds, as Tybura continues to steam, perhaps I would look at like a Diniz knockout prop here come fight day. I do, however, think Tybura is going to be the rightful favorite in the spot. Obviously, with that grappling threat, if able to take the fight to the mat, his edge grappling should be more decisive than that of Diniz on the feet. So slightly leaning that way, but again, a volatile matchup and certainly one that could go either way at heavyweight.
Yeah, Diniz in a camp for Derek Lewis, pure striker. Very different matchup here against a guy in Tybura who mixes the martial arts really well for a heavyweight. Tybura, like you said, coming off that Spivak loss, a fight in which he was out grappled. Prior to that, lost to Aspinall, champion of the division, arguably the best heavyweight in the world. And yeah, I mean, we bring up the Williams fight because Williams is supposed to be this great wrestler, but he didn't try to wrestle. And it's funny, after that loss, even though he was on a huge win streak going into that fight, the UFC decided to cut him because of his style. And even in that third round, when he did decide to wrestle, he had a pretty easy time taking Diniz down. I mean, Diniz shows a 70% takedown defense in the UFC. That's with Williams taking him down, and Austin Lane, who I really don't rate at all as a wrestler. I think Tybura gets it done here. Looked really good too against Tuivasa on the feet. I mean, Diniz, it's heavyweights. He's powerful. He could find the KO. But I think at this price, I mean, we're talking about level of competition. We're talking about well-rounded ability and what Tybura is capable of. I think as long as he avoids getting knocked out early, he should roll here. Probably finds a finish on the mat. And if this does stay in striking range, if he doesn't get KO'd, I think it's competitive. I mean, Tybura's striking is better than a lot of other heavyweights in this very shallow division. Better understanding of footwork than most of Deniz's opponents at this point in his career. And again, Diniz not necessarily preparing to face a grappler, having just come off a camp for Derek Lewis, where Derek Lewis was forced to pull out with an illness. So I like Tybura here. I love the price. I think he gets it done one way or the other. But yeah, I'll be playing Tybura on the money line.
All right. Sounds good. We'll look now at this matchup at welterweight between Mickey Gall and Ramiz Brahimaj. Mickey Gall, slight favorite in this spot, minus 140 against Brahimaj, who could be had at plus 120 odds. What are your thoughts on this matchup?
I mean, this is about as low level as it gets by UFC standards, at least at welterweight. I mean, Gall coming up through the promotion, he's been fighting in the UFC for his entire career, so the record's ugly. I mean, he never really had a chance to develop on the regional scene. He did look pretty good his last time out in that fight against Bassil Hafez. It was a loss, but it was narrow enough that I think a lot of people thought he won. Gave a decent showing of himself against Alex Morono a couple years back. He's improving, and I don't know that we could say the same necessarily for Brahimaj. Completely dominated on the mat against Themba Gorimbo, who's a rising prospect, but certainly one I consider to be a bit overrated. His only wins coming against Michael Gilmore, Sasha Palatnikov. I mean, you talk about guys who probably aren't or weren't ever UFC level. Those two definitely fit that bill. Brahimaj's greatest strength is his submission grappling, but Gall is the better wrestler. I think his grappling's pretty much on that level. And then on the feet, I mean, it's only listed as 2 inches, but I think Gall's going to have a considerable reach advantage here. His striking continues to improve. Brahimaj very hittable in exchanges. I don't like putting any money on Mickey Gall ever, especially not as a favorite. Wouldn't recommend anybody do it. But I do think he's the side here. I think these are just two kind of low level guys, but we've seen bigger jumps, bigger improvements from Mickey Gall. Brahimaj also spent a lot of time out with some injuries. Fights out of a good camp in Fortis. There's a bunch of good Fortis guys on this card, so he's going to have a good corner. He's going to be prepared, but at the same time, I think Gall probably just a little bit too much for him. Probably a fight that goes the distance. Again, very, very low confidence play relative to UFC standards, very low level matchup. But I'll go with Gall for now. I think he's just a bit more well rounded, and I've seen more out of him lately than we have from Brahimaj.
Yeah, for me, I think one of the best bets on the card is Ramiz Brahimaj. I'm going to be fading Mickey Gall here. Mickey Gall as a favorite is, I just think you have to be stupid to go to the window and bet on this guy.
Yeah.
You're 7-6 as a professional, 0-3 skid in his last 3 fights, and it's not like the competition's all that good. Moreno was a good fighter in 2021 when Gall lost to him, but these last 2 fights, Mike Malott, okay. Bassil Hafez, somebody we'll talk about again in a moment, but somebody who I do not think is good at all. Brahimaj, the issue is that clear grappling deficiency, taken down and controlled easily by Court McGhee, and as you mentioned, Themba Gorimbo in his last fight. Gall, good grappler, but in terms of his wrestling, I really don't think it's good at all. He averages just over 1 takedown landed per fight, and I don't think he's going to be strong enough to really get Brahimaj into any compromising positions on the mat here. Additionally, he's going to get hit. Brahimaj, tight boxing, just solid with his hands, not very high level, but better than Mickey Gall, the guy who always keeps his head on the center line. And while we have seen improvements in Mickey Gall's striking overall, he's going to get hit again in this matchup. I think Brahimaj is going to be able to touch him up when this fight is on the feet. Brahimaj, again, the wins aren't very high level, as you had said, but neither are Mickey Gall's. Like, the guys he has beaten are not good at all, and the guys he's losing to are also not good at all. Again, Mickey Gall, a New York guy, somebody I think is getting a bit more love than he should at this number. I'm shocked Brahimaj isn't favored in the spot, so I'll be betting him. Again, 2 lower level guys, but really no one's lower level than Mickey Gall, in my opinion. Perhaps I'm discounting him a bit too much. Again, some good showings lately from him, so I think he's due for another stinker here. And yeah, I think Brahimaj has the skills to pick him apart. So now, as we mentioned, Bassil Hafez fighting the fight prior to that. This matchup against Oban Elliott. Elliott, the -240 favorite in this spot against Hafez, who could be had at +190. I think this is one you have to favor Elliott on a 7-fight winning streak. He's somebody who's also not super talented or skilled, but he employs very good grappling pressure, and he's generally just an annoying opponent to face, somebody who's constantly going to be moving forward, looking to close distance against you. It impressed me watching him outgrapple Preston Parsons in his last fight. And yeah, I think while Hafez has decent jiu-jitsu, he's overall not really that effective when his fights do tend to hit the mat. Especially against a bigger, stronger wrestler like Oban Elliott. I don't think we're going to see Hafez have much success when this fight is on the ground. And on the feet, while Hafez has, earned a couple knockout wins, his hands really aren't anything that special. And Elliott has proven, durable and able to take strikes when his fights are on the feet. The wins for Hafez, Mickey Gall, Evan Cutts, Anthony Ivy. It's really no one that spectacular. And again, with Elliott's, the team around him, I think a lot of guys think this kid could have a bright future. I don't think the style is going to end up playing out that way. Kind of a boring watch, but again, he should be able to smother Hafez in my eyes as this matchup plays out and likely win, probably via decision.
Yeah, again, I mean, similar to the last fight, this is pretty low level. And I know people like Oban Elliott. He's on this nice win streak, but I really don't rate him at all. And I wanted to rate Hafez, but that performance against Mickey Gall, I mean, just kind of showed he has a lot of holes in his game still. So Excuse me. I think both these guys are similar in some ways. I mean, they both have some power on the feet. They can both take a lot of shots. But at the same time, I mean, there's really nothing that stands out about either of them other than maybe their physicality. And even then, in this division, it's not like they're going to stand out against most of their opponents. I'll say this though, and like Elliott does seem to be improving. We've seen decent looks out of him. He looked pretty good against Parsons. That win over Woodburn, though, it's just like it's really kind of soured me on this guy's upside. Woodburn, really, really low level, and while Elliott did get that done, it was just way more competitive than it probably should have ever been. Um, so yeah, I'm leaning Elliott here. Gonna keep an eye on the line movement though. Trying to find it right now. What was the money line last you saw it?
Yeah, I had two minus 240. Elliott the favorite over Hafez at plus 190.
I mean, 240 feels a little bit wide. I don't know. I just haven't been really impressed by either of these guys. Hafez's stock was so high off of that Della Madalena fight, but he took a ton of shots in that fight. Della had to cut weight twice in 1 week, and I don't know. I think a lot of people, myself included, just put too much weight into that at the time. So I'm on the Elliott side here, reluctantly. Hate the money line price. Really wouldn't go anywhere near it. Two durable guys, though. Maybe just take the over and just hope it goes the distance. But again, another low level fight. The first few on this card are kind of tough.
Yeah, they really are. Thankfully, sorting out the early prelims, we do have a decent scrap here. This women's strawweight matchup between Veronica Hardy and Eduarda Mora. Hardy, the minus 160 favorite against Mora, who could be had plus 135. I think we will be in for some pretty interesting grappling exchanges here. Hardy's a BJJ brown belt, a very skilled grappler, somebody who uses her grappling to great effect in the octagon. Dangerous with her offensive submissions. Certainly somebody who I could see winning by submission in this matchup. But Morrison's joining the UFC has really showcased her grappling as well, landing 5 takedowns in her previous fight, 3 takedowns in her UFC debut against Montserrat Ruiz, a fight that she won by stoppage. She's bigger, I think. I think a bit stronger than Hardy. So it would be a matter of Hardy's skills winning out against Mora's size and general wrestling ability. I think, again, though, Hardy with her jiu-jitsu prowess should be able to hit some reversals or at least attempt some submissions in this fight that could give her the edge. In terms of finishing ability, I think she has a slight edge over Mora, although Mora certainly with her hands could do a bit more damage than Hardy, in my opinion. Although we certainly have seen some significant developments from Hardy in terms of her stand up as well. I don't think quite on the level of a girl in Mora who has really trained all of the martial arts on her way up. But yeah, again, that jiu-jitsu edge for Hardy makes her the rightful favorite in my eyes. I think it's a super competitive matchup, though. And, honestly, getting plus money, I'm kind of tempted to take Mora. If this is one to go to the judges' scorecards. But it's still a fight I might do a bit more digging on. As always, check out our article Saturday for our official picks for each of these fights. But Nick, you got a pick on this one?
Yeah, I mean, I'm leaning Hardy. I think you left out one key piece of information here. It's that Moore is moving up a weight class. So while she has looked good, she's been kind of bullying the women she's facing. Um, Obviously, Hardy kind of small for 125, but this is more moving up. So I think that is notable. Hardy's going to be the much better technical striker here, like leaps and bounds ahead. But I do think Moore probably able to secure takedowns. This fight's just going to come down to Hardy's ability to work her way back to her feet. Like you said, I think she has enough of jiu-jitsu ability to do that. But I'm with you. Probably spend a little bit more time on this one. Mora, better grappler. Hardy, better striker. Hardy usually outsized, but with Moore moving up a weight class, I don't necessarily know that we see that here. I want to see how weigh-ins look. I want to check face-offs. But yeah, Veronica Hardy, ever since she's married Dan Hardy, really a rejuvenated fighter, one of the better minds in the sport. In her corner, not only in her corner, but in her house and in her ear every day, every minute. Certainly game planning around what Moore is good at. So I do favor Hardy here. She's won a lot of these pay-per-views opening up the card too, which is interesting. I don't know if that's something they're doing consciously or what. But I like Hardy here for now. Again, I just think more moving up a weight class. She's not going to have that size and strength that she did down at 115. So I like Hardy here.
And well, I am looking forward to UFC 209 this weekend. Be sure to tune in, enjoy the pay-per-view on Saturday night, and as always, check out Dine Sports for our official predictions for each of these fights on Saturday morning. Nick, as always, it was great breaking down the fights with you. Hope you enjoy them this weekend.
Take care, everyone.